Supplies wise, I am going to be using acrylic, so I'm going to do some swatches on a plate for everyone so you can compare your colors to mine. So I'm just going to get out a piece of canvas, and I am going to suggest you can go any size under 16 by 20. My only advice is if you do something bigger than that, you might find yourself having to add some time on. So if you grabbed whatever you had at home and it just isn't 16 by 20 or smaller, it just means you need to add a few minutes on. And these classes usually, the last 30 minutes for a class for me, we're all kind of detailing, doing something different on our paintings. So the final step is usually 30 minutes before that, and that way I'm available if you have any questions or just to be a voice of support. But we've been doing these since March just to have a little bit of fun. So if it's the first time doing one, welcome. We're doing these to relax, to get to sit down for 2 hours in case you haven't gotten off your feet today. So definitely be doing that. You do not have to stand up the whole time while we're painting. And I'm just going to go over my plate real quick for everyone. And probably you can guess that we're going to be using white and black, but if you have it all in one pile, what I would suggest doing for your first color is to make sure you have your whites separated, especially with winter paintings. You don't want all of your white to get muddied up or dirty. So whenever I get out white, I swatch the white into more than one place. So that way, when I do need clean white for snow and things like that, it's all broken up really nicely and separated. And you guys are more likely to have snow this time of year, depending on where you're at in this country. Virginia, not so much. It's more like misty mountains right now and fog happening. So maybe this will help get us some snow this year by painting one of these pieces. For a blue, I would just suggest the basic one, so a cobalt blue, or so that would be cobalt dust. I'm just using sky blues pretty much. So anything that kind of reminds you of a basic sky blue. Another one that I can use that's already a nice deep one is if you have a phthalo or an ultramarine blue. They're really nice blues to use. So that's just your deepest blues. If you only have one kind of blue in your kit, the great thing is all the colors I have in my painting are mixable. So if you have black, you can add that to your plate as well. So if you have a blue that's too light, you can add black to it to darken it. So you can actually make two piles of blue and you can make two different ones. If you only have a dark blue, same thing. You can make two piles of that blue and add white to it, and then you'll have a lighter blue. And there's someone. There she is. So I would definitely have two blues. And so even if you have one blue, you just squirt it into two places and make one darker or lighter than the blue that you have. It makes it a little bit easier, especially with the background, to have both. So I got black blue, and I would have a lighter blue and a darker blue. Especially with the sign, it just helps it, and especially if you're making blue. If you already have like a teal color or something, you could probably use it for this painting, but what I'm going to do is mix for mine since I only need a little bit, so I'm going to put a pinch of yellow. So less than a dime size amount of yellow will be used for this piece, and it's also for making orange. If you have orange, you can swatch that onto your plate for your carrot nose. And if not, just make sure to remind yourself to put a little bit of primary red, like your basic red on there, so you can mix for your orange nose. And then we do make burgundy. So burgundy is just red and brown or red and black. It's just a dark red. So if you have a nice deep red, you can put that on there. If you don't, and you have this yellow, run me this red over here, you can mix for it by adding black to it. So you can take your black and your red and you can mix them together, and you can deepen your red that way. So you can actually just make yourself a bit of a darker red by mixing brown or black, and it'll help make it a scarlet or a burgundy tone. And now I'm going to need some more regular red now. So I'm going to swatch that back over here. You won't need a lot of your warm colors. There's not that many. And yes, I'm just really talking about the colors that we're mixing for right now. And I think the last one is the gray tones. This is also how the whites are separated. One of the piles of white are going to turn into, yes, gray, which we're going to use a lot of as well. So gray is just white and black. So there's a lot of colors that you can just mix for on your plate to play with. The deeper reds are just red with a pinch of black or brown. Orange is yellow and red. Blues, you can either have a cobalt, an ultramarine, or a phthalo, just blues that are different tones. And if you only have one, you can take advantage of black and white to lighten or darken your blue when you need to. If you happen to have a lot of paintings left over from making Christmas pieces last year, hopefully you take advantage and be able to use up some art supplies today. And if you have any questions, I'm just on radio silent because I'm giving steps out right now, so you shouldn't hear any background noises or anything like that except from one screen. If you just need a question, you can just leave it in the chat. I'm seeing that like right in front of me. So the second you leave a question, when I have a pause moment, I answer all those questions and I will write right back to you directly. And I am burning a candle right now. I have candles out on my desk. I have so many vanilla and chai ones burning. And for brushes, you just want medium, big, and small. So a background brush. So I'm going to also put that on my desk in case you want to see those physically. So I just always say have a nice big brush because if you're painting on 16 by 20, it goes by a lot easier if you have a background brush. And then I like medium-sized brushes to use as well. So this is about medium for rounds and flats. And I'm holding those up to the camera so you can see those. So these are my medium brushes, flats and rounds. And it's absolutely fine for me to substitute in filbert brushes and things like that. Filberts and slanteds are still flats and rounds. They're just different kinds of brushes. So for example, this is a filbert and they're great for making clouds and things like that because they're also round. And then you want detailing size brushes. So just to show you the difference in size, detailing would be this much smaller than your medium. So you just want to make sure you have significantly smaller brushes for when we're at the end for putting in the letters and things like that. You definitely want to have water and a rag nearby. So the rag will help with collecting moisture and things like that. I always have like a napkin or something that's about to go out the door, or a roll of paper towel works great too. And the biggest brush I have is this 1.5 inch size. And I'm just going to get a little bit of the moisture off. And what I like to do if I know I'm about to cover most of the background is I get some of the surface damp. You can either take your brush damp and you can completely pre-wet the surface that way. And you do this because the gesso sometimes in the very beginning of a painting can be very dry if it was done a long time ago or if it was pre-gessoed. So you just want to reactivate it by putting a little bit of clean water on your canvas. And there you go. Done and done. And I highly recommend burning candles and drinking tea this time of year. I'll be fully endorsing that. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and mark out 3 big circles for the snowman in order to get the background. So what I'm going to do is earthworm out some land to put our snow onto. And I'm going to show you what color I want to do that with. So if you have a lighter blue, and you can always lighten the blue by adding more white like I'm demonstrating right now. And I'm just going to use this big brush to get these shapes going, is you can come to the bottom of your canvas, and just so you can see how much, I'm going to use about a thumb's distance of land space at the bottom of my canvas. So there's my thumb. So right where my thumb is how much I would recommend on your canvas. And I'm just going to do a little bit of an earthworm curved line. And after you have that, you just want to go ahead and be very gestural with these lines. These are just an understudy, so we're going to go back into these. But what I like about using a light blue for a pumpkin is pumpkins and snowmen and things like that. I'm sorry, snowmen. See, look at that. Look at me slipping up. Snowmen. The all snow is very reflective, so that's why you always want to paint a snowman with gray or blue when you draw it in to give it more definition than painting it in white. So this blue is also going to double up as a shadow color for your pumpkin, so you want to just be very careful to kind of do them very thin if possible. You don't need them to be super thick, but the blue does help out with some definition. So I'm going to start off with a nice mound for the body. And I love skinny and chubby looking snowmen. I do both. They're both super cute. So there's one big circle to start off with the body, and then I just go within the first circle that I do, and I start the second one. So I make sure they touch, so I don't go right up to the top. I go right inside of the last one I do. And so there's a second one. And if you ever make any mistakes, a damp brush or a piece of paper towel while something's wet, you can usually smudge off a line and redo it if you need to, just like an eraser with a pencil. If something's still wet, you can edit it and push it around while it's on the canvas. And then last but not least, I'm going to get a circle at the top, and I'm just leaving it open because we're also going to go ahead and sketch in the hat. So there's my pumpkin. And you see I'm just swiping in a few of extra shadows on the bottom pumpkin right here. So you can put in a few extra shadows. And if you want to remove any, again, a nice clean and damp brushing is reach over your water cup and get one of your clean brushes, and you can buff away a line that you don't want. But these blue lines are just to make our pumpkin a little bit more reflective of its surroundings. So I'm just buffing in a few extra shadows on its body. Go ahead and show the hat. It's a straight line and a rectangle, but make it a bumpy rectangle. So when I'm going to use the same color real quick, that way if we make a mistake, it's a forgiving color like light blue. And I go right into it. So I see a lot of people who put hats on their pumpkins, and if it's a tiny one, you can start right at the top of their head. But if it's a big one, you want to start actually a little bit further down so it covers their forehead a little bit. You don't want it to look like it's going to fall off. So the first thing you want to do for a hat is just put a straight line in for the lid, the little lip part. So there's my straight line. So just a straight line. And you notice how now the pumpkin's head looks like the letter C. So you can tell I came down quite a bit into my circle. And then once you have the lip of his hat, I like to make a really bumpy. No, it doesn't have to be super. It doesn't have to be like an Abe Lincoln hat size hat. It can be a short-lipped one. A lot of people like straw hats as well. So it's whatever hat size you want. And you just want to make a bumpy rectangle shape. So here's mine. I'm going to just throw in a box on top of his head, but I like it to have a few wrinkles and shape to it. So I'm going to round it out. And same thing with the body of the pumpkin. If it's a hat, you definitely want to have shadows on it. So you can just be random. There's no particular brush stroke. It's just throwing in a little straight lines that we can buff out to be like imaginary shadows. Have your water cup and your big brush ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and show my background strokes. And I just always say, if you're working on your background, I love texture. So it's nice to kind of think of like the letter X. So if you know your letters, a lot of brush strokes are mimicking letters or handwriting. So I'm going to be kind of going back and forth and crisscrossing a lot of my brush strokes to make it like a snowy looking scene. And the colors that I use is light blue, grays, and white for the background. So that way you have silver tones, you have the blue, and you can have some snow aspect to it. So it doesn't need to be fully one color. So again, too, if you don't have any gray, that's fine. You can mix for some. I would use like a pinch of black will make white turn gray or into a silvery gray. So you don't want like a charcoal level gray. You want to aim for a very silvery one. And so here is black, and you can put that in with your white, and so now you have a nice silvery color to use. You just want to have fun, mix some color tones. I hopefully will see everyone has a different background at the end. Some people like darker blue, some people like lighter. So as long as you're using white, gray, or blue for the background, that's fine. I'm going definitely with the lighter. So here I am, I'm loading up my inch and a half big brush, and I'm just going to go in with sweeping. So I'm just going to go right here to the bottom part of my canvas, and you can use a color, one color to start, but don't finish something with one color. Have fun and, do gray, for example, and then I can grab a little bit of a lighter blue and sweep that in as well. I'm going to get this wet, and hopefully the water makes your paint move around like melted butter. And you can always add more water to your paint if it's not gliding enough. But I highly recommend a damp brush when painting in this background. And I'm just going to do some nice loose brush strokes. So there's some light blue and gray, and then I'm going to finish the background, just sweeping my brush back and forth still. So what I'm going to do is wetten my medium-sized brush. I just want to give her a minute to switch out that big one because we won't need it again. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't have anyone having a hardened paintbrush at the end. So that's why I'm like, I would wash that one off and put it to the side after you get your size. But the snowman is going to be white, and we're not making those shadows disappear. So I just add water to my white on my plate directly to thin it down. And after I fin it, I'm just going to go in and start really making sure I like the shape of my snowman and also putting a little bit of paint. So right now there's the vanilla color of my canvas. And I want a little bit of a titanium crystal looking snow color instead. And you want to thin that color down. We don't want it to be super thick on our snowman. There's a lot of layers that happen, so if you add water to your paint, it helps to thin the color down, and also with dry time it gets decreased. The thicker the paint, it's a little bit stickier and it just takes a little bit longer to harden up. So I am using water to thin down that white, and I'm mopping it in with my medium-sized flat brush. Reloading up for that second circle. And I'm going right over top of those blue shadows to fill them in. And I'm going all the way up to the head, so I just finally got to my last and final circle. So I'm still liquidating up my white to help it spread and also so it's nice and flat. definitely feel comfortable to go right over top those lines and incorporate those blue shadows so it's all one snowman. I'm going to go ahead and do my hat, and what I would suggest doing is use black and gray because you don't want your hat to become flat. If you paint something all one color, it's going to look like a cookie or someone stuck a sticker on your painting. So if you can at least incorporate two tones for things like hats or something with folds in it, I would suggest it. And for brushing strokes for the hat, I kind of like zigzag my brush in to give it wrinkles. So I don't paint straight up and down for the hat. I kind of want it to look like it's been underneath the weight of snow and things like that. So I'm going to show that. I always start from light to dark. So I'm not going to start off with my black. I'm going to start off with some gray. And just to show again, this is how I mix for a lighter gray, a pinch of black, and a lot of white. And I'm going to go over to the hat and just sweep in gray first, and then anything that's remaining will be black. So here's how much gray, and I'm going to pause afterwards so you can see how much is gray and what's going to be left over for black. So there's some gray. And just like with the snowman, you're probably going to notice that as you keep adding brush strokes, some things are expanding and getting a little bit bigger. And you want that to happen. So same thing with like the lip of the hat. You can enlarge it to fit onto your pumpkin's head better as well, because you want it to look like it's sitting on the pumpkin's head. And so there's the rest of my hat, and then the rest I'm going to do with black. And like I mentioned at the beginning of class, you can totally do a straw colored hat. You can make your brown a light brown. You can add dark brown. The hat color can change. You can have a red hat if you want to. Go for it. I'm just going to go a little classic and have a nice charcoal colored hat. And what you want to do when you're tracing an object is just take your brush like you're holding a pencil, and you want to drag it very slowly around an object in order to fill it in. And if your brush feels like it's too big, that's a good indicator that you want to switch to a smaller size brush. So if it for any reason feels difficult or that it's not really fitting the size of your object, that's usually when I put my brush down and grab a different one in order to finish filling something. And you just want to take your time and go really slow so that way you can see where your brush strokes are going to end up. And I'm just going to start off by putting in two arms, and I like to use a dark gray or brown for the arms of snowmen. So if you have that color as well, but just know where that is on your plate. And just to show, see, I could use my darker charcoal color over here. You can even warm it up a little bit by adding this to it, some yellow. And I'm just going to go for that middle area of my snowman's body. I'm just going to put a diagonal line right there, and then I'm going to go to the other side and do it again. This is two sticks. And a flat brush is what helps you get a very nice sharp line. It's all about pressure. So I don't push down hard on this line or anything like that to get a very thin line. If you push it down, you get a thicker line. If you're very light on your brush strokes, you get a thinner line. And once you have two diagonal sticks for arms, I'm going to sweep like a smiley face or a very wide U shape to start the banner. And you want to make sure it droops. You want it to go really low, so it's going to come right down here in front of his belly. So there's my banner string. start putting in tiny little rectangles for your banner. And you want to just pick 2 colors to use, so you can mix a little bit of green, use a light blue, a teal tone, you can use a gray. So I'm just mixing a little bit of a teal or pretty much a green with a little bit of yellow. It's got a green with a lot more blue in it. And then I have some light blue actually right here I can use up if I just rehydrate it with some water. So I'm just going to make sure I got plenty of both. And I want to just start making my rectangles. And I'm going to really have fun with them. Like there's wind blowing in this piece, so I'm going to have them all kind of turning from different angles. I don't want them to all look the same. And once you have your 2 colors picked out for your banner, you just want to start at the top of your line. And one thing too that helps out is if you do have a Sharpie or a pencil, or you can even use a little bit of gray, is when I have this all loaded up and I have my brush, you want to count out the letters that you need and how many banner pieces you have. So for me, I'm going to need 8, 9, 10, 11. You can even do 12 to add in another snowflake. So you want to have 11 or 12 in order to type in let it snow, and if you want 2 snowflakes. You can do less if you want let it snow and you don't want any snowflakes. So you can do as many banner pieces as you like, but you need at least 11 or 12 in order to do the snowflakes included. It's 11 inside of that sample piece that you saw. And so what you can do is actually dot that off if you would like. So you can actually just take your marker out and pre-mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and tonight I ended up with 12. And it always just matters, you know, how wide's your snowman. So that's why I said 11 or 12. 12 is enough spaces for me to spell out let it snow. And if I have any extras, you just throw a snowflake on them or an ornament or something like that that's wintry. So I'm just going to start filling them in now that I ticked off a few spots. So if you did like me, I just use that for lettering and things. I throw out dots for how many letters I'm about to make, and that way I know the spacing before I get going. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and I ended up with 12, I think, in my count. So I'm going to start laying in some rectangles for my letters. So I'm just going to start pushing down on my brush that's already shaped like a rectangle. That means the last remaining spots I have will make it 12. So again, I'm just going to mix color, green tone, and putting a pinch of yellow in it. Mixing that up, and then I'm just going to go for it, find a gap, and throw in an extra banner piece. Imagine forest green and burgundy would also be a really nice banner color. This one will definitely have a nice icy, chill, cool feeling to it. And blue is my favorite color, so there's a lot of choices in my mind when it comes to blue. Break out old school on some of y'all in here. I'm definitely got a piece of scrap paper on my desk for snowflakes. I'm going to show them as big as I possibly can before I do them on my canvas. If you would like to join me at the scrap paper, it never hurts to practice something before you go to your canvas. I sometimes try something out on like the napkin or my rag or something like that. So if you're not used to painting snowflakes, you can also use your paint marker if you like, or practice on a scrap paper. There's more than one way of getting that technique done. So I have scrap paper. And that way, if some of you guys want to see it as dark as possible, you can. So For snowflakes, there's a couple of patterns, but the most popular one is a plus sign with an X, and then you can always keep adding on V shapes to it in order to make it more complicated. So just to show that with black so that way everyone can see it, because the snowflakes, I'm hoping you're going to do whites and blue tones. So I'm going to show it in black though, so everybody at home can see this. Don't do snowflakes in black. That's not what I'm suggesting. So here it is on my scrap paper. And if you can see this, there's a plus sign, and then you can take an X through it, and then you can add on V shapes. So you can start off with one medium-sized V, and then you could do tinier ones along the way. So you could use V, small V, big V, small V, big V, big V, small V. You can do dots at the ends of snowflakes. You can do dots on the ends of the V's. There's quite a lot of patterns, but this is a really pretty one to do. So this is one snowflake pattern. It's really nice. You can go simpler than that. You could have just left it here. You can also do just these circles. So just to show all the variations that you can do it just like this as well. So there's another one. You can make one side longer than the others. And so you can do these in 3 different colors in this piece. You can even use your gray. So gray, blue, and white, just like with the background, is also what I would say would be great colors for the snowflakes. The snowflake too, we're going to be doing just dots as well along this piece, and I'll show you how to do that with the back side of my brush. But I'm going to start tapping it in just snow and snowflakes while we wait on that banner to dry, so that way we can get to decorating our snowman in a moment. But these are the basic shapes that you're going to be seeing. That'll be harder to see if I was doing lighter colors. For brushes, you can do snowflakes with tiny round brushes. And then I also like to get out my other detailing brushes. So flats, really small flats with sharp points are great for snowflakes. So let me get this wet and show you this with purple maybe, so you can see that this one's paint. So let me do this again for you on my scrap paper. I'm going to move it over here, and I'm just going to do it again. So you see I'm using a flat brush right now. And I can come in with some V's. My paint's a little dry over here, that's for certain. And then you can just do dots at the end. Now you can do dots in 2 different ways. You can use the front side of your brush, but another trick to do is if you want to, you can use the back of a brush to make dots as well. So you can actually turn your brush around and tap your brush in paint, and if you tap it, you're going to get dots. So you can use the back of your brush as well. So it's already a circle at the back side, so that's how you can get dots. This is some of the basic patterns pretty much that you want to repeat. X's and plus signs, V's, and dots is what I'm going to just use. I just like to have something easy to memorize, because especially if I'm going to go everywhere with it. So I'm just going to start doing that now in my background. But I hope that helps in case you were nervous about the snowflakes and stuff. They're just plus signs, X's, and V's. So if you can write your name, you can do some snowflakes. I'm going to get my brush nice and wet with my clean water over here. And I'm just going to start adding in some snowflakes. And I'm also going to go ahead and give the suggestion to dot in your eyes and the buttons of your snowman with the same technique. So if you have any dark gray, black or brown left on your plate, if you want to use the backside of your brush for this next step, it will probably give you really nice eyes and nose, and we're going to do the carrot as well with the orange. So we're still going to be using our detailing brushes. So I'm going to show how to do my carrot nose, and then you could just tap for the eyes and the mouth of your snowman. Just to give everyone a heads up. So you probably have the right brush. You might want to switch it off. If you don't have orange premix, orange is yellow and red. And I am just going to be giving my little snowman a smiley face in a moment. You can always help guide me too, so if you are done with the step, if you don't mind giving me a friendly thumbs up, whether you're using your thumbs up button or your actual thumbs, both are fine with me. I'm just going to show you how I tap in the eyes and use my flat brush to put in a carrot nose. And it's actually something we've already went over, it's just a different color. So if you push down on your brush, it makes the brush strokes wider and longer, and I just kind of do that for a carrot nose, so I don't draw out a triangle or anything like that. I'm just going to load up my little flat brush with a little bit of orange and show you how I push down and I lift up in order to swipe, kind of like a little swift, very short brush stroke to tap in a nose. But tapping and just pulling a brush gives you more control over the shape and size of things, so I definitely recommend it. And the nose can go up or down. There's actually more than one way of doing noses out there. Round brushes, you can lay those down flat too, but I like the tapping method because it kind of lays in a path so that way I know where the nose is going. So I'm going to load my little flat brush up with a little bit of orange, so the smallest flat that you have, so that way you have a nice sharp point. Get some water. This orange is sat for a minute. I like more yellow than red in my oranges, so if you're wondering why mine's is very bright. So I'm going to go ahead and you can put the nose up or down. There's no wrong answer for a snowman. So if you want to, you can point it up to the top right and so on, but I always end up with a different face on every snowman I make. They're never identical. So I'm going to tap my brush. We're just going to plan where your carrot nose goes so you have somewhere to aim for. So for example, there's a dot of orange now in the center of his face. And then I'm going to do another dot for how long I want it to be. So 2 dots. And one thing I tell a lot of beginners to do is you can either tap in your nose so that way you can see how big it's getting, or you can just push down on your brush so that way the size is something you can do. So when I start over here, I'm not going to push hard on my brush. I'm going to tiptoe almost back towards the center of his face, and there I add more pressure. So you naturally usually start pushing down on the brush. So that's why I go from thin to thick. So I'm just going to put my brush, touch it right on the canvas, tap it for the first part of the nose because it's going to be perfectly sharp, and so I'm not going to push down on my brush because I'll be scared to make it too wide. Then once I get past that, I push a little bit down on my brush to widen my brush stroke until I get all the way to the first dot. And then if I need to widen it up, I can along the way, but there's my carrot nose. So the trick is to tap for that first tip of the nose so that way it stays sharp. And then you can add in some pressure as you get behind it to thicken it up. So there's a nose. And then I'm going to use the back of my brush to go ahead and tap him in some eyes and a mouth. And you can use brown or black or your dark gray. There's a lot of options actually for that. And the eyes, I put them pretty close together for a lot of my snowmen. Habit, I guess. I can't say that about the mouth on my snowman. That's where I spread out a little bit. That's a really bright, big smile that I give him. And so I just put the smile like right underneath or right next to the nose pattern. Tap, tap, tap. And then there's my smiley face. I'm going to dip that flat brush. I'm still using the same brush. So it's the same tiny little flat one. I love them. It's a very useful detailing brush. I'm just going to grab a nice dark color off my plate real quick. I'm going to go ahead and go to my banner. And what I'm going to do is just, you don't have to like outline everything or anything if you don't need to, but over top some of them I do clothespin. So if you tap your little straight brush, it's going to give you tiny straight lines, and so you can tap in the clothespins. And so that way they show above that line, so I'm just tapping for those. So there's my clothespins coming in. And also, while you have this color loaded up, you can tap in some fingers for your snowman or some branches in order to grab your banner. So I usually do like 3 on each side. So here comes one to touch the banner finally. Here's another twig on this side. And here's one more branch over here. I'll just re-outline if I see any white dots at this point. Start making it look nice and clean. And there's some branch-like effects. So you can just do some wiggly or straight lines, some curved lines to make your tree branch look a little bit more realistic on the arms. And just make sure it's touching your banner finally. And last but not least, if you want to sharpen up the edges of your banners, you can also use the exact same color and the exact same brush to do that as well. So if you want to go underneath some of them, like I'm demonstrating now, and just shaping them up, you can by doing some outlining. So there's a nice dark outlining around my banner. Everything's really dry and pinky touchable at this point, so if you have your Sharpies or a gel pen or your paint markers ready to go, I'm going to write my letters in and do my snowflakes. And the snowflake demonstration is the exact same one as the ones for the background. So you've had a little bit of practice hopefully before you get to these smaller ones. And again, you can change the words out. There are so many sayings out there for winter paintings. You've probably seen them at Hobby Lobby, Michael's, and everywhere else. So you can even put a family name. I love the family name ones, by the way. Those are so personal and custom. So if you're someone who loves a lot of monogramming and things, you can actually spell out a name on these as well. There's a lot of fill-in you can do for the letters. You do not have to say "let it snow." They can say just about anything you want them to. You just want to make sure that they fit within the number of boxes like Scrabble before you do it. I also can do hearts sometimes as I do on my filler spots as well. So I'm going to get started with just writing in my letters. So these are all dry, but if you wanted clothespin lines and everything, those are just really tiny straight lines that give the illusion of the idea, so they don't have to be fancy or perfect. It's amazing what a few lines can do and change in a painting. So I'm just going to spell out "let it snow" for everyone who is doing that. So I'm doing that one. You sometimes do family names on it if I know it's going to be a gift for somebody. So if it is, then you can change up those words. But I'm going to go ahead and spell out let it snow and then what I can do for the fillers. So. And I'm doing all capital letters in case you wanted to know. And if your letters bend to fit the banner, that makes it 10 times more realistic. Definitely will not be an issue or something you want to make disappear. So and I worry about thickening my letters after I get them on if they're not that big. If they're not bubble letters, I write them all out first, normal, and then I go back on top of them. So I'm just going to continue doing that. So again, you want to count your boxes. So if you have exactly 11, you might not have this one extra one like I do, and I just put hearts and snowflakes on them. You might have 2 extra left, and again, hearts or snowflakes, will get rid of those. So you should have enough for let it snow. 11 or 12 will end up just whatever fit within your banners. This really has to do with the arm width of your snowman. But just, plan it. Say the L goes here, spell out let it snow real quick on your banner in your head, and then write it out. And my trick for painting in hearts is I draw the letter V. So if you do like hearts and you don't want to do snowflakes, you just do the letter V and then you thicken it up at the top half and you'll end up with a heart if you're painting them. So I do the letter V and then I just go on top of it